Sophia Carter sat upright at her desk in the executive office of Lancaster Holdings, her hand unconsciously resting on her stomach beneath the loose blazer. She had kept this secret for 8 months and 3 weeks, and if everything went according to plan, she would leave in just a few weeks, without anyone ever knowing. But every plan had flaws. The sound of Italian leather shoes tapping against marble signaled the arrival of Damien Lancaster. His sharp gray eyes scanned the office before settling on her. "You look different today." Sophia's heart clenched, but her voice remained steady. "New blazer." Damian narrowed his eyes slightly, but said nothing more. He continued into his office, but Sophia knew he had noticed something. She took a slow breath, forcing her focus back on the screen. But the moment her fingers touched the keyboard, a sudden pain clenched deep in her abdomen. Sophia bit down on her lip, waiting for it to pass. No, it was too soon. She still had 3 weeks. Everything had to go according to plan. Through the glass door, she watched Damian stride across the room, exuding control. Sophia closed her eyes, whispering to herself, "It's fine, I have this under control." She had no idea this secret, this carefully built lie, was seconds away from unraveling. Sophia had once believed she would never make a mistake like this. But that night in Chicago, she let emotions win over reason. A raging storm had delayed their flight indefinitely. While waiting, she and Damian sat at the hotel bar, both exhausted after a long day of negotiations. "One drink won't make you lose control, Sophia," Damian had said, his sharp eyes softer than usual. One drink, then another. Their conversation shifted from work to something more personal. The sacrifices made for success, the lonely nights in the office, and then in the dimly lit bar filled with the haze of whiskey and unspoken words, the line between them blurred. The first kiss in the elevator, his breath warm against her skin as the hotel room door clicked shut, the whispered words, the burning touch of his fingers against her body. By morning, the storm had cleared. Damian had simply buttoned his crisp shirt, his face unreadable, his touch absent, like the night had never happened. No promises, no lingering looks. Just her, left alone with the consequence. Sophia tried to push the memories aside and focus on work, but the pain from this morning hadn't faded. It had only gotten worse. After work, she went to her best friend Elena Brooks' apartment. The moment Elena saw her, she frowned. "You don't look okay, Sophia. You're pale." "I'm just tired," she lied. But the moment she sat down, a sharp pain clinched her lower abdomen, making her grip the armrest. "That's not exhaustion, that's labor," Elena shouted. "I'm calling an ambulance." "No!" Panic surged through Sophia. If she went to the hospital, Damian would find out. Elena clenched her jaw. "Then at least let me call an Uber." The car weaved through New York's evening traffic as Sophia tried to convince herself these were just Braxton Hicks contractions. But when her water suddenly broke, reality hit her like a freight train. She was in labor. Before she could catch her breath, a car in front of them swerved sharply. Screeching tires, the deafening crunch of metal against metal, the violent jolt sent Sophia's world spinning. The impact hurled Sophia forward. A sharp pain tore through her stomach. Her phone slipped from her grasp, clattering onto the floor. "Sophia!" Elena screamed, but her voice sounded distant. When the world stopped spinning, all Sophia could feel was the warm wetness between her legs and the searing pain spreading through her body. The baby wasn't waiting anymore. A paramedic yanked the door open, his voice urgent over the radio. "Female, approximately 34 weeks pregnant, motor vehicle accident, active labor. We need immediate transport to the hospital." Elena grabbed Sophia's phone from the floor, the screen cracked but still glowing. The emergency contact flashed across the screen. Damien Lancaster. Damien Lancaster sat in the executive boardroom of Lancaster Holdings, reviewing a multi-million-dollar contract. Everything was going according to plan, just as he always ensured it did. Then his phone rang. He almost ignored it, but when he saw the caller ID, a chill ran down his spine. "Mount Sinai Hospital," he answered, his voice steady as always. "Damien Lancaster." "Mr. Lancaster, This is Dr. Regina Chen from Mount Sinai's emergency department. We're calling regarding Sophia Carter. She's been in an accident and is currently in labor." Time froze. "In labor?" His voice dropped to a lethal calm. "She's approximately 34 weeks pregnant. We need you to come immediately." The blood in his veins turned to ice. The puzzle pieces clicked into place. Sophia leaving early, the loose blazers, the way she had avoided his gaze. She had been hiding this from him for months. And now the truth came crashing down like a tidal wave, drowning every ounce of control he thought he had. All rational thought disappeared as he shot to his feet, grabbing his coat. "Don't let her leave," he ordered before hanging up. No one dared to stop him as he strode through the office, his presence cutting through the air like a blade. As he sped through Manhattan's traffic, only one question repeated in his mind. Why did she think he didn't deserve to know? When Damian stepped through the hospital doors, the world around him blurred into insignificance. Sophia was pregnant. She had been carrying his child for 8 months and had never said a word. A nurse led him to the emergency room. The doors swung open and he saw her, lying on the hospital bed, pale from pain, hair damp with sweat, but still, Sophia. Her eyes widened when she saw him. Maybe she had hoped he wouldn't come. "Damian?" Her voice was hoarse, breathless. "I was going to tell you." A violent contraction cut off her words. Damian's fists clenched. Anger, betrayal, confusion, all of it swirled inside him, but right now only one thing mattered. He stepped to her bedside, took her trembling hand in his. "We will talk about this, but not now." His voice was steady, unwavering. "Right now, you need to focus on delivering our child." She stared up at him, uncertainty clouding her expression. But then another contraction hit, and she gripped his hand so tightly that her nails dug into his skin. "Doctor, the baby is crowning," a nurse called. "Sophia, you need to push," the doctor urged. She shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "I can't." "Yes, you can." Damian's tone was firm, unwavering. He leaned down, gripping her hand tighter. "I've worked with you for years. I've never seen you back down. Don't start now." Sophia's breath hitched. Then she nodded. The next contraction came. She pushed with everything she had. A sharp, piercing cry filled the room. "Congratulations, it's a boy." Sophia broke into sobs. Damian stood frozen, watching as the nurse wrapped the tiny baby in a blanket. Someone handed him scissors. Would Dad like to cut the cord? For the first time in his life, Damien Lancaster had no idea what to do. But as he held the scissors, hovering over the umbilical cord, something shifted. This wasn't a business deal. This wasn't a calculated move. This was his son. But somehow, his hands remained steady as he severed the delicate connection between mother and child. And in that moment, he knew. Everything had changed forever. Damian didn't leave the hospital, even after the doctors assured him that both Sophia and the baby were fine. He stayed, sitting silently beside her bed, his sharp gray eyes never straying far from her or the newborn. Hours later, when Sophia finally woke, she found herself in the quiet recovery ward. Beside her, Damian was holding Lucas Lancaster in his arms. The sight made her throat tighten. "You're still here?" she whispered. Damian looked up, his face unreadable. He hadn't slept, yet he didn't seem tired. "Did you think I'd leave?" His voice was low, dangerous. Sophia gripped the blanket tighter. "You don't have to do this, Damian. You don't owe me anything." Damian was silent for a long moment. Then he stood, stepping closer to her bed. "Oh, you?" His brow lifted. "Sophia, do you really think I'd find out I have a son and just walk away?" She bit her lip, looking away. "You don't have to take responsibility. I can handle this on my own." Damian placed Lucas carefully in the bassinet beside her, then leaned in, hands braced on the edge of her bed. There were only inches between them now. "Is that what you think?" His voice had gone rough. "That I'm only here out of obligation?" Sophia's breath caught. "You're Damien Lancaster. You don't believe in marriage. You don't believe in family. I've heard you say it 100 times. Damien studied her for a long moment. "Then let me prove you wrong, Sophia. Not with words, not with promises, but with actions. With us. 3 days later, the doctor cleared Sophia for discharge. Damian had arranged everything. A sleek black SUV waited outside. A nurse carefully secured Lucas in the car seat. Everything ran smoothly, efficiently, just as Damien Lancaster always ensured. Sophia sat in the passenger seat, a storm raging inside her. She knew she should feel grateful. Instead, all she felt was trapped. When they arrived at Damien's penthouse, the doors opened, and she froze. This place had always been minimalistic, cold, devoid of any signs of life beyond its luxurious furniture. But now, a crib stood neatly in the master bedroom. Baby formula, a changing table, a bottle warmer, all perfectly arranged. Sophia turned to Damian. "You did all this in 3 days?" He shrugged off his coat, voice calm. "I don't intend to be an absent father." But that only made her panic more. "Damien, I can't stay here." He stilled. "What?" She took a deep breath. "I had a plan. I was moving to Boston. I got a job offer there." "Liam Whitmore." Damien's voice was no longer sharp. It was lethal, dripping with controlled fury. "You were planning to take my son away?" Sophia clenched her hands. "I wasn't taking him from you. I just..." "Just what, Sophia?" He stepped closer, his gaze burning into her. "You think I'm just doing my duty? You think I'd let you walk away without a fight?" Her throat tightened. "I can't stay here just because you feel obligated." Damien stared at her for a long moment. Then slowly, he nodded. "If you want to leave, I won't stop you." She hadn't expected that. "But don't think for a second that I won't fight to keep my son in my life." Her heart pounded. She had been prepared to leave. So why did it feel like she was the one being left behind? The next morning, Sophia woke with a heavy sense of unease. She was no longer in the hospital, but the air in Damien's penthouse felt more suffocating than any sterile white walls. She quietly stepped into the living room, only to find Damien already awake, standing by the window, his phone clutched tightly in his hand. Before she could ask what was wrong, her own phone buzzed nonstop. The moment she unlocked it, her blood ran cold. Front page headline: CEO Damien Lancaster's secret baby with former assistant, hidden for 8 months. Paparazzi photos of her at the hospital, of Damien, his face unreadable as he walked through the ER doors. Her breath hitched. A cold dread settled in her chest. She looked up at Damien, her voice barely above a whisper. "How?" "Whitmore." Damien's jaw tightened. "He was at the office yesterday. He must have overheard something, and now the entire world knows." Sophia gripped her phone. "This could destroy your reputation," she whispered. "I don't care," Damien cut her off, "but I won't let them drag you through the mud." Another message popped up on her phone. An email from the board of directors. "We need to face this," Damien said. "Right now." 20 minutes later, they entered the main conference room of Lancaster Holdings, where the board was waiting. But that wasn't the only thing that made Sophia's stomach twist. The press was there too. A reporter stood the moment they walked in. "Mr. Lancaster, rumors say Ms. Carter was promoted because she's the mother of your child. Care to comment?" Damien didn't hesitate. "Ms. Carter was promoted because she's one of the most capable employees at Lancaster Holdings. That is the only reason." "And your personal relationship with her?" Sophia took a deep breath. This moment would change everything. Sophia could feel the camera flashes exploding around her, the scrutinizing gazes of the board members drilling into her. She glanced at Damien. He was calm, composed, but his hand resting on the table was clenched so tightly that his knuckles had turned white. Another reporter spoke up. "Mr. Lancaster, what about the child? Do you intend to publicly acknowledge your role?" Damien straightened, his voice steady and firm. "Lucas Lancaster is my son. I have nothing to hide." Silence fell over the room. Sophia swallowed hard. This was it. If she didn't speak now, the rumors would spiral out of control. She clenched her hands, then stepped forward. "I hid this because I was afraid," she said, her voice clear despite her pounding heart. Not because I wanted to manipulate anyone, but because I didn't know how to face it. A moment of silence. Then, a reporter asked, "Afraid of what, Miss Carter?" She took a deep breath and turned to Damian. Afraid he wouldn't want a family, afraid that if I told him he would see it as a burden rather than something precious. Damian stared at her. Then, in front of the entire press and boardroom, he reached for the microphone. "The only thing I regret," he said slowly, "is that she didn't tell me sooner." The entire room seemed to freeze. And if anyone in this room believes I'd let the woman I love and the mother of my child walk away, then you've grossly underestimated who I am. A murmur swept through the audience, but Sophia could only look at Damian. He wasn't looking away. He was here, for her, for Lucas. 6 months later, autumn rain drizzled over New York. Inside Damian's penthouse, the golden glow of the lights cast a warm contrast to the storm that had changed everything half a year ago. Sophia stood by the window, cradling Lucas in her arms. He had grown so much, soft brown hair curling at his forehead, gray eyes mirroring the man who had claimed him as his own. "What are you thinking about?" Damian's voice came from behind her. Sophia smiled softly. "Chicago. That storm." Damian stepped closer, wrapping an arm around both her and their son. "Oh?" She nodded. "Back then, I thought it was just a fleeting moment. A mistake." Damian leaned down, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "And now?" Sophia turned to face him, no longer afraid, no longer uncertain. "Now," she whispered, "I think it was the beginning of us." Damian smiled, one of those rare, unguarded smiles that only she and Lucas ever saw. "I think so too." Outside, the rain continued to fall, but this time, it didn't signal the end of something. It marked a new beginning, a real family born not from perfection, but from love, struggle, and the choice to stay.